The story begins on a quiet, freezing December evening in a small town tucked away along a lonely stretch of highway. This wasn't the kind of place that made headlines or drew crowds. It was the kind of town where everyone knew each other, and life moved at a slow, predictable pace. Nestled right off the main road was a little diner called Marcus's Place. The diner wasn't fancy. It had chipped paint on the walls, mismatched chairs, and a jukebox that only played old soul tunes. But it had something special. Heart. Marcus Johnson, the owner, stood behind the counter wiping down tables with a rag worn thin from years of use. He was a tall man with broad shoulders, warm brown eyes, and a smile that could light up even the darkest room. Marcus had inherited the diner from his grandmother, who used to say, "Food feeds the body, but kindness feeds the soul." Those words stuck with him, shaping the way he ran his business and treated people. His cooking was simple: fried chicken, collard greens, mac and cheese, but it came with a side of warmth that kept customers coming back. Tonight, however, things felt unusually quiet. The diner had seen only a handful of locals earlier in the day, and now, as the clock ticked closer to closing time, there wasn't a single customer left. Outside, the wind howled like a restless animal, rattling the windows and sending icy drafts through the cracks in the doorframe. Marcus glanced at the weather report playing softly on the radio behind the counter. The forecast warned of an approaching blizzard, a massive storm expected to hit within hours. He sighed, thinking about the long drive home to his wife Sarah and their cozy farmhouse on the outskirts of town. But before he could turn off the lights and lock up for the night, a loud knock echoed through the empty diner. Startled, Marcus looked toward the entrance. Through the frosted glass of the front door, he saw two shadowy figures huddled together against the biting cold. They knocked again, more urgently this time. Curious and concerned, Marcus hurried over and unlocked the door. Two men stumbled inside, shaking snow off their boots and brushing frost from their jackets. Their faces were red from the cold, and they looked utterly exhausted. One of them, a burly man with a scruffy beard, spoke first. "Please, sir, we're sorry to bother you, but our rig broke down a few miles back. We didn't know what else to do. Can we just stay here until the storm passes? We'll pay whatever you ask." Marcus studied them for a moment. These weren't criminals or troublemakers. They were just two tired truckers caught in a bad situation. Without hesitation, he nodded and stepped aside. "Come on in," he said warmly. "You don't need to pay me anything. Let's get you warmed up." The two men exchanged grateful glances and followed Marcus to a booth near the heater. As they sat down, Marcus grabbed a couple of mugs and filled them with steaming hot coffee. He set the mugs on the table along with a plate of cookies Sarah had baked earlier that day. "Eat up," he said. "It'll help take the chill off." While the men sipped their coffee, Marcus asked if they needed anything else. Blankets? A phone to call for roadside assistance? Both men assured him they were fine, though one admitted they hadn't eaten much all day. That was all Marcus needed to hear. Within minutes, he returned with bowls of piping hot chili and thick slices of cornbread. "On the house," he said firmly when they tried to protest. As the men ate, they told Marcus their story. They were hauling freight across state lines when their truck's engine gave out in the middle of nowhere. With no cell service and temperatures dropping fast, they decided to walk to the nearest source of shelter, which turned out to be Marcus's diner. By the time they finished eating, another knock sounded at the door. This time it was 8 more truckers, equally desperate and freezing. Marcus didn't hesitate. He welcomed them all inside, offering whatever food and supplies he had. Word spread quickly among the stranded drivers via CB radios, and soon the diner was filled with the hum of conversation and laughter. Despite the storm raging outside, the atmosphere inside Marcus's place grew warmer by the minute. What started as a quiet night was quickly turning into something extraordinary. Little did Marcus know, his act of kindness would spark a chain reaction that would change not only his life, but the lives of countless others. For now, though, he focused on taking care of the people in front of him, one bowl of chili and one cup of coffee at a time. As the blizzard intensified outside, Marcus's diner transformed into a haven of warmth and camaraderie. The once empty space was now alive with voices, truckers sharing stories, laughter, and even a few tears as they opened up about their lives on the road. Marcus moved between tables, refilling coffee mugs, handing out blankets, and making sure everyone felt comfortable. His calm demeanor put people at ease, and his constant smile reassured them that they were safe here. The truckers came from all walks of life. Some were seasoned veterans who had been driving for decades, while others were newer to the job, still adjusting to the long hours and lonely stretches of highway. Despite their differences, they shared a common bond, the road. And tonight, they also shared something else, a deep gratitude for Marcus's kindness. One of the first arrivals, a grizzled older man named Hank, sat in the corner booth nursing a cup of coffee. He wore a faded baseball cap and a leather jacket patched together over the years. When Marcus stopped by to check on him, Hank looked up and said, "You know, I've been doing this for 30 years, but I ain't never seen nothing like this storm. Folks like you make me believe there's still good in this world." Marcus chuckled softly and replied, "Well, I'm just glad I could help. You folks are toughing it out in those rigs every day. I figure the least I can do is keep you warm and fed when times get rough." Hank nodded thoughtfully before launching into a story about his early days as a trucker. He spoke of cross-country, trips that lasted weeks, roadside diners where he'd met lifelong friends, and the thrill of seeing new places. His tales painted a vivid picture of life on the open road, and soon other truckers gathered around to listen. Each person added their own memories, creating a tapestry of shared experiences that filled the room with warmth, not just from the heater, but from the connections being forged. Meanwhile, Maria, a young woman with curly hair tucked under a knit beanie, sat quietly at another table. She seemed lost in thought, occasionally glancing out the frosted window at the swirling snow. Marcus noticed her and brought over a fresh plate of cornbread. "Everything okay?" he asked gently. Maria hesitated before nodding. "Yeah, thanks. It's just, this storm reminds me of how unpredictable life can be." She paused, then added, "I've been saving up to open my own bakery someday, but nights like this make me wonder if I'll ever get there." Marcus smiled warmly. "Dreams have a way of finding us when we least expect it," he said. "Trust me, I've been where you are. My grandma started this diner with nothing but determination and faith. If you've got the heart for it, you'll find your way." Maria's eyes brightened at his words, and she thanked him sincerely. Encouraged by his optimism, she joined the group listening to Hank's stories, contributing her own anecdotes about late-night deliveries and the kindness of strangers she'd encountered along the way. By midnight, the storm showed no signs of letting up. Snow piled high against the windows, and the wind screamed like a wild animal trying to break in. Inside, however, the mood remained upbeat. Someone suggested a game of cards, and soon the tables were rearranged to accommodate makeshift card tournaments. Others played board games or simply chatted, sharing jokes and advice. The diner buzzed with energy, a stark contrast to the desolation outside. Sarah, Marcus's wife, arrived sometime after hearing about the situation. She brought extra blankets and supplies from home, pitching in without hesitation. Together, they worked tirelessly to ensure everyone stayed comfortable. Sarah even helped set up makeshift beds using spare mattresses and sleeping bags stored in the attic. By the time the last blanket was handed out, the truckers had settled into their temporary quarters, grateful for the shelter and companionship. Throughout the night, Marcus kept vigil, checking on each person to make sure they were okay. He knew some might struggle to sleep in unfamiliar surroundings, especially with the storm raging outside. So he lingered by the fire, offering quiet words of encouragement whenever someone needed reassurance. At one point, a younger driver named Jake approached him looking anxious. "I don't mean to bother you, Mr. Johnson," he began, "but I'm worried about my rig. What if the cold damages the engine? I can't afford repairs right now." Marcus placed a reassuring hand on Jake's shoulder. "We'll figure it out tomorrow when the storm clears," he said. "For now, focus on staying warm and getting some rest. Worrying won't change anything tonight." Jake nodded, visibly relieved, and returned to his spot by the fire. Moments like these reminded Marcus why he loved running the diner. It wasn't just about serving food. It was about being there for people when they needed support most. As dawn approached, the storm finally began to weaken. The wind died down and the snowfall slowed to a gentle flurry. Exhausted but content, the truckers drifted off to sleep, lulled by the crackling fire and the steady hum of conversation. Marcus took a moment to step outside and survey the damage. The world was blanketed in pristine white, eerily silent except for the occasional drip of melting snow from the roof. It was beautiful, yet daunting, a reminder of nature's power and unpredictability. Back inside, Marcus glanced around at the sleeping faces scattered throughout the diner. He felt a swell of pride and gratitude. These weren't just customers, they were people whose lives had briefly intersected with his. And though the storm had brought chaos, it had also created something remarkable. A sense of community born out of shared adversity. Little did Marcus know, this was only the beginning. As the sun rose higher in the sky, casting golden light through the frosted windows, the true impact of his actions would soon become clear. For now, though, he allowed himself a rare moment of peace, knowing he had done everything he could to help those in need. The next morning, the blizzard had calmed, but its aftermath lingered. The diner was still filled with the sound of quiet breathing as most of the truckers slept, exhausted from the long night. Marcus moved quietly through the space, tidying up and checking on his unexpected guests. He knew they would need to leave soon. Trucks needed to be inspected, deliveries rescheduled, and lives put back on track. But he also knew that getting everyone ready for the road wouldn't be easy, as iridescent sunlight filtered weakly through the frosted windows. Marcus realized they were running low on supplies. The storm had stretched their resources thin, and while generosity had carried them through the night, practical concerns now loomed large. There wasn't enough food left to feed everyone a proper breakfast, and the firewood pile was dwindling fast. Marcus frowned, trying to think of solutions. He couldn't let these people go hungry or cold, not after everything they'd been through together. Determined to find help, Marcus stepped outside into the crisp, icy air. The world looked like a winter wonderland, blanketed in pristine white snow. But beneath the beauty lay challenges: frozen roads, downed power lines, and isolation. Still, Marcus refused to give up. He grabbed his phone and started making calls, reaching out to friends and neighbors who might have extra supplies to spare. His first call was to Tom, an old friend who owned a small grocery store in town. "Tom, I need your help," Marcus said earnestly. "We've got 10 truckers stranded here and we're running low on food. Anything you can send over would mean the world." Tom hesitated only briefly before agreeing. "You know I can't say no to you, Marcus. I'll round up some canned goods and bread. Give me an hour." Relieved, Marcus thanked him and hung up. Next, he called Sarah's cousin, who lived on a nearby farm. "Hey, Lucy," he began. "Do you have any firewood lying around? We're burning through it faster than expected." Lucy laughed warmly. "Of course, Marcus. I'll load up the truck and bring it over. You take care of those folks here." By mid-morning, help began arriving. Tom showed up with boxes of canned vegetables, rice, and even a few jars of homemade jam. Lucy followed shortly after, her pickup truck loaded with bundles of dry firewood. Other neighbors heard about the situation and pitched in too. Someone dropped off a thermos of hot soup. Another brought blankets, and a local mechanic volunteered to check on the stranded trucks once the roads cleared. Word spread quickly throughout the small town. People rallied together, inspired by Marcus's selflessness. Even those who couldn't contribute directly sent messages of support, reminding Marcus that kindness has a way of multiplying when shared. Inside the diner, the truckers woke one by one, stretching stiff limbs and blinking against the daylight streaming through the windows. The smell of fresh coffee brewing greeted them, along with the sight of Marcus bustling around, organizing the newly arrived supplies. When they learned what Marcus had done to ensure they were taken care of, gratitude washed over them. "You didn't have to do all this," Maria said softly, watching Marcus stack cans of beans onto a shelf. "You've already done so much for us." Marcus shrugged modestly. It takes a village sometimes. Besides, I couldn't do it alone. Everyone here stepped up to help. You included. Her eyes softened, and she nodded, clearly moved. Moments later, she joined a group of truckers gathered near the fireplace where Hank was recounting another tale from his days on the road. This time he spoke about a time he'd been stranded in a similar storm and how strangers had helped him survive. His story resonated deeply with the others, reinforcing the idea that compassion could turn even the toughest situations into opportunities for connection. Meanwhile, Jake, the young driver worried about his rig, volunteered to shovel snow from the parking lot. I can't fix engines, he admitted, but I can at least clear a path for everyone. Others quickly joined him, forming a team effort to dig out the trucks buried under drifts of snow. Laughter rang out as they worked, the physical labor warming their bodies and lifting their spirits. Back inside, Marcus noticed something remarkable happening. The truckers weren't just helping themselves, they were helping each other. One man offered tools to another whose truck needed minor repairs. A woman shared tips on navigating icy roads safely. These acts of mutual aid created a sense of unity that transcended their individual struggles. They weren't just strangers passing through anymore. They were a community forged by shared hardship and kindness. As the day wore on, the mood shifted from survival to celebration. With the storm finally behind them, the truckers began preparing to leave. Some expressed concern about delays in their deliveries, while others worried about the condition of their rigs. But despite these worries, there was a palpable sense of hope in the air. They had made it through the worst of the storm, and they had done so together. Before anyone could head out, Marcus called everyone to gather near the counter. "Listen up, folks," he said, raising his voice slightly to get their attention. "I want to thank each and every one of you for trusting me last night. You could have gone anywhere, but you came here, and I'm grateful for that. Before you leave, I've got one more thing to share." He turned to Sarah, who stood nearby holding a tray laden with slices of her famous peach cobbler. The aroma wafted through the room, drawing smiles from everyone. "Breakfast is on us," Marcus announced. "And dessert, too. Consider it a reminder that no matter how tough things get, there's always sweetness waiting somewhere." The truckers cheered, clapping Marcus on the back as they lined up for plates of scrambled eggs, toast, and steaming cups of coffee. For the next hour, the diner buzzed with laughter and conversation, the earlier worries about broken-down rigs and missed deadlines momentarily forgotten. But as the meal wound down and the reality of departure set in, Marcus felt a pang of sadness. These people had become more than just visitors. They were friends he might never see again. Determined to leave them with something meaningful, he grabbed a marker and a stack of napkins. "Before you go," he said, handing them out, "write down your names and CB radio handles. Let's stay connected. Who knows? Maybe our paths will cross again someday." One by one, the truckers obliged, scribbling their details with smiles. By the time the last napkin was filled, Marcus had a collection of names and stories he knew he'd treasure forever. As the first truck rumbled to life outside, Marcus stepped onto the porch to wave goodbye. The drivers honked their horns in appreciation, flashing grins as they pulled away. Each departure felt bittersweet, but Marcus reminded himself of the impact this experience had made, not just on him, but on everyone involved. Little did he know the ripple effects of his kindness were far from over. While the storm had passed, the bonds it created were just beginning to grow. And in the days to come, those connections would lead to something extraordinary. A gesture of gratitude that would change Marcus's life in ways he couldn't yet imagine. As the last truck disappeared down the snow-covered highway, Marcus stood on the porch of his diner, watching the taillights fade into the distance. The morning sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the icy landscape. Despite the chill in the air, Marcus felt a warmth in his chest, a deep satisfaction that came from knowing he had made a difference. He had opened his doors to strangers in need and, in doing so, created something rare and beautiful, a bond that transcended mere chance encounters. But the story wasn't over, not by a long shot. Unbeknownst to Marcus, one of the truckers, Hank had an idea brewing as he drove away. It wasn't just gratitude he felt, it was admiration for the man who had gone above and beyond to help them all. We should do something to repay him, Hank said aloud, glancing at the CB radio mounted on his dashboard. He picked up the mic and keyed it. "Hey folks, this is Big Rig Hank. Anybody out there still listening?" Static crackled before voices responded. "Yeah, Hank, we're here," came a reply. "What's on your mind?" Hank hesitated for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Listen, I don't know about y'all, but I'm feeling mighty grateful for what Marcus did back there. That man didn't just give us shelter, he gave us hope when we needed it most. What if we spread the word? Let other drivers know about Marcus's place and how much good he does." The response was immediate and enthusiastic. "I'm in," said another voice. "That guy deserves recognition." "Same here," chimed in Maria. "If every trucker stopped by to thank him, imagine how much support he'd get." And so, the plan took shape. Over the next few hours, the story of Marcus's kindness traveled far and wide via CB radios, social media posts, and phone calls between truckers. Word spread like wildfire, reaching drivers across state lines and even different regions of the country. By evening, hashtags like "Thank you Marcus" and "Diner Hero" began trending online, accompanied by heartfelt messages and photos of the cozy little diner nestled along the lonely stretch of highway. The following morning dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the chaos of the previous days. Marcus woke early as usual, ready to tackle the day ahead. He assumed life would return to normal now that the storm had passed and the truckers had gone. But when he stepped outside to shovel the remaining snow from the parking lot, he froze, in disbelief. Stretching as far as the eye could see was a line of semi-trucks, massive rigs with shiny chrome grills and colorful decals. They lined the highway leading to Marcus's place, bumper to bumper, their engines idling softly. Some drivers leaned against their cabs, sipping coffee and chatting with one another. Others waved enthusiastically when they spotted Marcus standing on the porch, his mouth agape. What is this? What? Marcus muttered to himself, rubbing his eyes to make sure he wasn't dreaming. A tall man with a cowboy hat approached him, extending a hand. "Morning, Marcus. Name's Charlie. We heard what you did during the storm and we wanted to stop by to say thanks. Looks like we weren't the only ones who got the message." Marcus shook Charlie's hand, still stunned. "This is incredible. I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Charlie replied with a grin. "Just keep doing what you're doing, that's thanks enough." By mid-morning, the diner was packed once again, but this time it wasn't because of a blizzard. Drivers poured in from all directions, eager to meet the man whose generosity had inspired such an outpouring of goodwill. They brought gifts, too: jars of homemade preserves, bags of fresh produce, and even cash donations slipped discreetly into Marcus's tip jar. One driver presented him with a custom-made sign that read, "Home away from home," which Marcus proudly hung above the counter. The atmosphere inside was electric. Strangers introduced themselves, sharing stories of their own experiences on the road. A young couple traveling cross-country stopped by to take pictures, saying they'd seen the story online and couldn't resist visiting. Even local residents joined in, curious to see what all the fuss was about. The diner buzzed with laughter, music, and the clatter of plates as Marcus and Sarah worked tirelessly to serve everyone. Despite the overwhelming turnout, Marcus remained humble. "I didn't do anything special," he insisted whenever someone praised him. Anyone would have done the same. But those words only seemed to deepen the admiration people felt for him. His humility, combined with his genuine care for others, struck a chord with everyone who crossed his path. It wasn't just about the food or the shelter. It was about the way Marcus treated people, making them feel valued and respected no matter where they came from. As the day wore on, the line of trucks showed no signs of shrinking. Drivers continued to arrive throughout the afternoon, some staying only briefly to grab a bite before hitting the road again, while others lingered to chat and soak in the welcoming atmosphere. Marcus marveled at the diversity of the crowd, men and women, young and old, representing every corner of the country. Yet despite their differences, they shared a common thread. They had all been touched by his act of kindness. One particularly memorable moment came when a middle-aged woman named Linda approached Marcus with tears in her eyes. She explained that she was a widow who had recently started driving trucks to support her family. "When I heard about what you did, it reminded me that there are still good people in this world," she said, her voice trembling. "People like you give me hope." Marcus hugged her tightly, moved by her words. "You're strong, Linda," he told her, "and you're never alone. This diner will always be here for you no matter what." By sunset, the parking lot was finally empty, save for a few lingering trucks whose drivers had decided to spend the night. Exhausted but exhilarated, Marcus sat down at one of the booths with Sarah, staring out at the horizon painted orange and pink by the fading light. "Can you believe this happened?" he asked, shaking his head in amazement. Sarah smiled, resting her hand on his. "I can. You've always had a way of bringing people together, Marcus. This is just proof of that." Though the initial wave of visitors had subsided, the impact of that day lingered. News outlets picked up the story, shining a spotlight on the small-town diner and its big-hearted owner. Reporters interviewed Marcus, Sarah, and several of the truckers who had benefited from his kindness. Photos of the endless line of rigs appeared in newspapers and magazines, capturing the nation's attention. But for Marcus, the real reward wasn't fame or recognition. It was the knowledge that he had sparked something meaningful. The truckers who visited didn't just leave with full stomachs. They left with renewed faith in humanity. Many promised to pay it forward, spreading kindness wherever their journeys took them. As Marcus locked up the diner that night, he paused to look out at the quiet highway. The storm was long gone, but its legacy remained, a testament to the power of compassion and the ripple effects of a single act of generosity. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of a new chapter in his life, one filled with unexpected blessings and opportunities to inspire others. The days following the unexpected parade of trucks brought a whirlwind of change to Marcus's life in his little diner. What had once been a quiet, unassuming establishment on the edge of a sleepy highway was now thrust into the spotlight. News outlets continued to feature Marcus's place, highlighting not just the story of the blizzard but also the spirit of community and kindness that defined it. The diner became more than a pit stop for truckers. It became a symbol of hope, resilience, and human connection. Word of mouth spread faster than Marcus could have imagined. Truckers who hadn't been part of the original storm rescue began rerouting their journeys just to visit. They came bearing stories, gifts, and gratitude, eager to experience firsthand the warmth they'd heard so much about. One driver arrived with a handmade quilt stitched by his wife, saying, "She wanted you to know how much your story meant to her." Another brought a guitar, strumming tunes late into the night as others sang along. Each visitor added something, unique to the growing tapestry of memories inside the diner. Local residents, inspired by the outpouring of support from strangers, rallied around Marcus too. Volunteers showed up daily to help manage the sudden influx of customers. Some washed dishes, others waited tables, and a few even helped repaint the exterior of the building, a fresh coat of blue with white trim that gave the diner a brighter, more inviting look. Suppliers donated ingredients in bulk, ensuring Marcus never ran low on essentials. Neighbors dropped off baked goods, jars of preserves, and homemade soups, turning the menu into a rotating showcase of local flavors. One morning, an elderly man named Walter walked in carrying a toolbox. He introduced himself as a retired carpenter and said, "I hear you've been working nonstop, Marcus. Let me lend a hand." Over the next week, Walter repaired broken chairs, reinforced wobbly tables, and even built a new shelf behind the counter to display photographs and mementos left behind by grateful patrons. By the time he finished, the diner felt sturdier, not just physically but emotionally, as if every nail hammered and every plank sanded carried a piece of Walter's goodwill. Even those who couldn't visit sent letters and donations. A teacher from Ohio wrote to say she'd shared Marcus's story with her students, sparking classroom discussions about empathy and generosity. A family in Texas mailed a check with a note that read, "For the next person who needs shelter or a warm meal." These acts of kindness poured in from all corners of the country, creating a ripple effect that extended far beyond the diner's walls. As the weeks passed, Marcus's place transformed into a hub of activity, unlike anything the town had ever seen. Strangers became friends over plates of fried chicken and bowls of gumbo. Conversations flowed freely, bridging gaps between people of different backgrounds, ages, and walks of life. Truckers swapped tales of life on the road while locals shared stories of growing up in the area. Tourists passing through stopped in, curious to see the diner that had captured national attention. Even children playing outside would peek through, the windows fascinated by the constant stream of big rigs pulling into the lot. Sarah played a crucial role in keeping everything running smoothly. Her organizational skills were unmatched, and she took charge of coordinating volunteers, managing supplies, and handling the flood of correspondence. She also introduced themed nights to keep things lively. Karaoke Tuesdays, storytelling Fridays, and potluck Sundays quickly became crowd favorites. On one particularly memorable evening, Hank returned with his guitar, leading an impromptu sing-along that lasted well past midnight. Laughter echoed through the diner, mingling with the scent of freshly brewed coffee and buttery biscuits. Despite the chaos, Marcus remained grounded. He greeted each customer with the same warm smile and attentive ear, making sure everyone felt welcome. When someone asked if he ever felt overwhelmed by all the attention, he chuckled and replied, "Overwhelmed? Sure sometimes, but mostly I feel lucky. Lucky to meet such incredible people and lucky to be reminded every day why I do what I do." Still, there were moments when the weight of it all hit him. Late at night, after the last truck pulled away and the diner fell silent, Marcus would sit alone at a booth staring at the photos taped to the walls. Each image told a story. A group of truckers posing with snow-covered rigs during the blizzard, a young boy grinning beside a towering semi-truck, a handwritten thank you note pinned next to a faded Polaroid of Marcus's grandmother. These reminders of connection and gratitude filled him with a profound sense of purpose. One afternoon, as Marcus flipped burgers on the grill, a familiar voice called out, "Hey, Marcus!" He turned to see Maria walking through the door, her curly hair tied back in a ponytail. She looked different, more confident, more radiant than the quiet woman who had sat by the window during the storm. In her hands, she held a small box wrapped in brown paper. "I promised I'd come back," she said, smiling shyly. "And I wanted to give you this." Curious, Marcus unwrapped the package. Inside was a beautifully decorated cake topped with fondant flowers and the words "thank you" written in elegant script. "I made it myself," Maria explained. "It's not perfect, but it's from the heart." Marcus's eyes widened. "Maria, this is amazing. Are you serious about opening that bakery?" She nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, thanks to you. Your encouragement gave me the push I needed. I've been practicing every day, and I think I'm finally ready." "Well, I can't wait to taste more of your creations," Marcus said, slicing a piece of cake for them to share. As they sat together, chatting about dreams and plans, Marcus realized how much his actions had impacted not just Maria, but countless others. His kindness had planted seeds of possibility, inspiring people to believe in themselves and pursue their goals. By the end of the month, the diner had become a cornerstone of the community. It wasn't just a place to eat. It was a gathering, spot where lives intertwined and friendships blossomed. People came for the food but stayed for the atmosphere, the sense of belonging that only Marcus's hospitality could create. Even tourists began including Marcus's place on their travel itineraries, eager to experience the legendary charm they'd read about online. Yet, amidst all the growth and recognition, Marcus never lost sight of his roots. He continued to serve hearty meals with generous portions, refusing to raise prices despite the increased demand. "This diner was built on love and hard work," he often said. "I'm not going to let success change that." As winter melted into spring, bringing warmer weather and longer days, Marcus reflected on the journey he'd been through. From the quiet night before the storm to the endless line of rigs and the newfound fame, every moment had taught him something valuable. He learned that kindness has no limits, that communities can form in the most unexpected ways, and that even the smallest act of compassion can spark a chain reaction. But perhaps the most important lesson was this: true fulfillment comes not from accolades or achievements, but from the connections we forge and the lives we touch. For Marcus's place wasn't just a diner. It was a testament to the power of humanity, a reminder that when we open our hearts, we create spaces where everyone feels at home. And though the storm had long since passed, its legacy lived on. In the laughter of strangers turned friends, in the stories shared across generations, and in the enduring spirit of a man who believed in the goodness of people. Months had passed since the blizzard, and life at Marcus's place had settled into a new rhythm. The diner was busier than ever, drawing visitors from all over the country who wanted to experience its legendary hospitality. Truckers still made it a point to stop by whenever they were in the area, often bringing friends or family along to share the magic. Locals cherished it as a community hub where everyone knew your name, and tourists marveled at the warmth that seemed to radiate from every corner of the cozy space. But for Marcus, the greatest reward wasn't the steady stream of customers or the glowing reviews. It was the way his actions had inspired others to pay it forward. Stories of kindness sparked by his example began trickling back to him, each one filling him with pride and gratitude. A trucker named Jake wrote to say he'd started carrying emergency supplies in his rig after witnessing how Marcus cared for stranded drivers during the storm. Maria sent photos of her newly opened bakery, complete with a sign that read, "Inspired by Marcus's place." Even Hank, now retired, volunteered at shelters across the country, sharing Marcus's story to encourage others to lend a hand when they could. One crisp autumn morning, Marcus received an unexpected letter in the mail. It was handwritten on simple stationery, but the words inside carried immense weight. The sender, a woman named Clara, explained that she had been traveling through the area during the infamous blizzard and sought refuge at the diner. At the time, she hadn't realized how much Marcus's kindness meant to her. She was battling depression and felt lost and alone. But sitting in the warmth of the diner, surrounded by strangers turned friends, she found hope again. "You saved more than just my body that night," Clara wrote. "You saved my spirit." Tears welled up in Marcus's eyes as he read the letter. He remembered Clara vaguely, a quiet woman who had sat near the window, wrapped in a blanket, sipping tea. He never imagined the impact his small act of compassion had made on her life. That moment reminded him why he kept going, even on the toughest days, because you never know whose heart you might touch. Determined to keep spreading kindness, Marcus decided to formalize his efforts. With the help of Sarah and some trusted friends, he established the Highway Helpers Fund, a nonprofit dedicated to assisting stranded travelers and supporting struggling diners like his own. Donations poured in from grateful patrons, trucking companies, and even rival diner owners who admired Marcus's generosity. The fund provided gas cards, meal vouchers, and emergency kits for drivers caught in bad weather, ensuring no one would face a storm or a hard time alone. As word of the Highway Helpers Fund spread, Marcus became a sought-after speaker at community events and conferences. People wanted to hear his story, not just because it was inspiring, but because it offered practical lessons about the power of empathy and action. Marcus always ended his talks with the same message: kindness isn't complicated. It's about seeing someone in need and asking yourself, what can I do? Sometimes the smallest gestures make the biggest difference. Back home, the diner continued to thrive, evolving in ways Marcus never anticipated. One weekend, a local artist transformed the exterior wall into a vibrant mural depicting scenes from the blizzard rescue. The artwork quickly became a landmark, drawing photographers and admirers alike. Inside, the walls were adorned with notes, drawings, and mementos left by visitors, a patchwork of gratitude that told the story of lives touched and changed. Sarah played a pivotal role in keeping the diner fresh and exciting. She introduced seasonal specials incorporating ingredients donated by local farmers. Pumpkin pie in the fall, hearty stews in the winter, and fresh berry cobblers in the summer kept customers coming back for more. On weekends, live music filled the air, courtesy of musicians who performed for tips and meals. The jukebox still played old soul tunes, but now it shared the spotlight with acoustic guitars and harmonicas. Despite the changes, Marcus remained steadfast in his commitment to authenticity. He refused corporate partnerships or flashy renovations, insisting that the diner stay true to its roots. "This place is special because it's real," he told Sarah one evening as they closed up shop. "It's not about fancy menus or Instagram-worthy decor. It's about people." And people kept coming, not just to eat, but to connect. Strangers struck up conversations over cups of coffee, sharing stories of their own struggles and triumphs. Families celebrated milestones, couples exchanged vows in the parking lot, with Marcus officiating, and kids played hide-and-seek among the tables. The diner had become more than a business. It was a living, breathing testament to the power of community. One particularly poignant moment came on the anniversary of the blizzard. Dozens of truckers returned to Marcus's place, parking their rigs in the lot and spilling into the diner to relive the memories of that fateful night. Hank brought his guitar, leading sing-alongs that brought tears to everyone's eyes. Maria served slices of her famous cake, while Sarah organized a slideshow of photos taken during the storm. As the evening wore on, Marcus stood at the center of it all, overwhelmed by the love surrounding him. "I never thought something so scary could turn into something so beautiful," he said, addressing the crowd. "That night taught me that storms don't define us. It's how we respond to them that matters. Together we created something unforgettable, and I'm honored to call each of you family." The applause that followed was thunderous, echoing off the walls and out into the night. Outside, the stars twinkled brightly, casting a soft glow over the diner and the long line of trucks parked nearby. It was a reminder that even in the darkest times, light can shine through, and that sometimes the simplest acts of kindness leave the most lasting legacies. Years later, when Marcus finally retired and handed the reins of the diner to Sarah and their children, Marcus's place remained a beloved institution. Visitors still came from miles away to sit in the booths, sip coffee brewed strong, and feel the warmth of a place where everyone belonged. And though Marcus spent his golden years tending to his garden and spending time with loved ones, he often returned to the diner, sitting quietly in a corner booth and watching the world go by. For Marcus Johnson, life had come full circle. What began as a humble diner inherited from his grandmother had grown into a beacon of hope and humanity. Through storms literal and figurative, he had shown the world that kindness has no limits, and that when we open our hearts, we create spaces where miracles happen. And so, the legend of Marcus's place lived on, carried forward by those who believed in the goodness of people and the power of a single act of kindness to change the world.